Berserk is probably my favorite manga of all time. I love it. I love Berserk. I read Berserk a couple years back and I fell in love with it. I was I'm such a big fan of it. It's the art is amazing. The illustrations are fantastic. I love it. The story is nuanced and complicated. It's it's this character drama filled with these great scenes, and they don't explain what everyone is feeling. They don't try to explain every nuance of it. They just show you that nuance. They show you the nuance of these great characters doing these amazing things, and you think, wow, like there's so much here to think about and to explore. But that has inevitably led to a bunch of people claiming that the main antagonist of the series, Griffith, did nothing wrong. And I'm not talking about the meme, because obviously the meme is a joke. But like there is a mentality behind the meme, hashtag Griffith did nothing wrong, that speaks to a core idea that has sort of been cropping up in the past couple years, and that is the idea that Griffith, if you examine all of his actions from like a bird's eye view, Griffith is probably not that bad. Like the idea is that in terms of the things he's doing, he is a net good on society and the greater part of Midland, which is the country the place takes story. The story takes place in. Jesus Christ. But so if you haven't seen Best Guy Ever's video, The Case for Griffith, I recommend watching that before this, because I'm basically going to be responding to those arguments, as well as a couple others that are repeated in a lot of other videos that try and justify Griffith's actions that I don't really need to go into with that much depth. But let's just examine Griffith's actions from beginning to end, and let's try and see where people are saying that his actions are justifiable and why they aren't. So right off the bat, I'm just going to say this. Yes, you can justify his actions. You can't justify them. You can explain them. Everything he does has an explanation because his character has all this nuance. So everything he does is very clearly influenced by who he is and what he thinks. So yes, everything he does is understandable given the context of the story and the circumstances he's been put in, but that does not necessarily mean that what he does is justifiable or morally correct. So basically, what do we know about Griffith? He's the leader of the Band of the Hawk, and he has been building up an army through his cult of personality. Like he's extremely charismatic, and he's attracting people with his goal of getting his own kingdom, of becoming the king. And he is a person of lowly status. He started off as like a peasant. So the fact that he's come this far speaks a lot to his motivations and his ambitions. And the series constantly reminds us his ambitions. He has ambitions. He is ambitious. He knows where he's going. He knows what he's doing. And for the most part, we get that sensation. I mean, everything he does is for the goal of winning the crown. Basically, what he does throughout the first part of Berserk is serve as a mercenary group for the Midland crown as to gain favor within the monarchy. And his goal by doing this is to eventually win the hand of the princess by becoming the most respected knight and killing off all the other competition, because Griffith is not above doing some really underhanded stuff. He straight up kills the queen. He kills the king's brother. Griffith wants that crown more than anything, and he'll do anything to get it. But things take a very sharp turn at a very key moment. So after Guts, who is the main character of Berserk, gets back from killing the king's brother and his son, performing this assassination for Griffith. And you have to remember, in the scene where Griffith is asking Guts to do this, Griffith is like, as a friend, I'm asking you, can you do this for me? And Guts is like, you could just order me to do it, and I'll do it no matter what. So from there, that's very important to the scene that we're going to talk about. So in the scene, Griffith is talking with Princess Charlotte, and Guts is listening in. Griffith doesn't know he's there. Guts is listening in. And Griffith tells Charlotte that he can't really consider the Band of the Hawk his friends. Not really, because to him, a friend is someone who has their own ambition and strives for it independently and with all their heart and soul. Someone who has a fire that burns as brightly as Griffith's does. Someone who is his equal. And this strikes a chord with Guts, who as a character has found no purpose in his life. Fighting was all he knew how to do. Killing people, fighting, getting money. And when Griffith asked him to perform that assassination, he was just like, okay, I'll do it because you're telling me to do it. Guts, when he hears Griffith talking about who he can consider his friend, is stunned because he's like, I am not worthy of respect from Griffith. I mean, he's saying this right now. And we have to understand that Griffith is probably not telling the whole truth to Charlotte. He never truly gives out his full thoughts and intentions to anyone except those closest to him. And even then, he might not say everything on his mind. He is someone who is very closely guarded and keeps up a very good facade. And it's very clear that Griffith does consider Guts a friend. And this is what ruins everything when Griffith says these things to Princess Charlotte and Guts hears them. Because Guts doesn't have an ambition, and everyone in the Band of the Hawk has some dream or goal. So Guts decides to leave the Band of the Hawk and pursue his own dreams. And Griffith is super against this. He does not want this to happen, and he tries to fight Guts to stop him from leaving, and he loses, and Guts leaves. And what Griffith does next, many people will argue that Griffith in this situation, like Griffith's downfall after this was directly the result of Guts. Well, first I should probably explain what happens after this so that we can put this into context. Griffith, in jealousy and spite, I don't even think Griffith could explain what he was thinking at the time. He sneaks his way into Princess Charlotte's room and does some things with her. And as a result, the king finds this out, and he has Griffith tortured and maimed for 3 years. Guts, after finding this out, helps the remaining Band of the Hawk free Griffith, but when they find him, oh god. Griffith has had his tongue cut out. All his tendons have been severed. He can't walk. He can barely hold things. He can barely, move any limbs. His face, we don't even see what his face looks like, but we know it's bad enough that Guts keeps the mask that Griffith is wearing on his head so that no one else sees it. And, oh god. But, yeah, Griffith is ruined. His status with the kingdom is done. The king will never respect him ever again. He doesn't have the physical strength to do anything. He can't even speak. His dreams of owning a kingdom are done, of being a ruler. And Griffith decides this is Guts' fault. Guts left the Band of the Hawk, and because that happened, all of this happened. This is Guts' fault. And he doesn't say this necessarily. I mean, he doesn't have a tongue, so he can't say it. And we don't get a good look into his thought process on this until the eclipse happens. So, the eclipse. Griffith finds the bayonet, which he had lost previously, but now he found it. And it's just this, it's this lucky item. It's this egg-shaped thing with a face on it that he found from a fortune teller randomly. And he just kept it on his person. And it's implied to give him really good luck because it's called, the Egg of the King. but he lost it. But now he finds it in this riverbed, and then it activates, and suddenly Griffith, as well as the rest of the Band of the Hawk, is transported to this extra-dimensional space. And there he is met with 4 demigods called the God Hand. They tell him, we can fix your body. We can give you a kingdom. You can achieve your dream. But to achieve your dream, you have to sacrifice that which you hold dearest, the Band of the Hawk. And Griffith agrees. The entire Band of the Hawk is slaughtered, eaten alive by monstrosities. The only people who survive are Guts and Casca, who is the only woman in the Band of the Hawk and Guts' lover at the time of the eclipse. And Griffith violates Casca in front of Guts and forces him to watch. And it's horrible, reprehensible. That is probably, killing a bunch of people is probably a lot worse morally than violating one person sexually. But from a narrative perspective, that is the point where we realize that Griffith has been fundamentally changed, and from this point on, he is the God Hand member, Femto. So, at this point, you're probably asking, well, why do people consider Griffith to be a good guy? Not a good guy, but why do they think that Griffith's actions have some sort of justification in the grand perspective here? Well, I'll get to that, but first I want to counteract a claim I've heard that Griffith's actions from this point on, if you consider what he was thinking and how he felt at the time when this happened, it's understandable why he did what he did, but it's not justifiable. So let's imagine that you have a friend, and that friend of yours decides to move to another college, or they go to college in another state, and they leave you behind to achieve their own ambitions, and you get really upset about this. You physically fight them over this, and in your jealousy and spite, in all of your twisting emotions about what this person is doing, you decide to do a bunch of really dumb stuff, and you get punished for it. Maybe unfairly, given the nature of what you did, but the fact remains you knew what was going to happen. Who do you blame for what happened to you, for you being punished? In Griffith's case, he blames Guts. Griffith has spite for Guts. Griffith has contempt for Guts. He is jealous of Guts. He was jealous of Guts. Guts had Casca, the love of Casca, who Griffith had the love of for quite a long period of time. He never reciprocated, but once he had lost everything, he was downtrodden to discover that Casca no longer loved him in that way, just because of what had happened to him. She still cared for him, but the sexual nature of it had completely disappeared. He had lost that, and he hated that, and he hated Guts, and in a moment of complete spite and complete hatred of Guts, he just does this horrible thing in front of him. And this is really, horrible to do to Casca, too. He doesn't even care about Casca. He's looking at Guts the entire time he's doing this. He's just doing it because he knows that it'll anger Guts, that it'll destroy him, and it does. This is not Guts' fault. It's not Guts' fault that he decided to leave. He can do whatever he wants. He's an autonomous human being, and Griffith, it is his responsibility to act appropriately to the situation, and the punishments he receives as a result of his actions are his responsibility. He played the Game of Thrones and he lost, and it was entirely his fault. But let's examine why people think femto might have some redeemable qualities. Because once femto is brought to the physical plane, in the conviction arc, I think, Griffith comes back. He is now a part of the world because he was in the astral plane for a really long time. But now he exists in the real world. And what he does is he creates a utopian society for all of Midland to live in, the city of Falconia. He merges the astral plane and the physical plane together and brings all this spiritual stuff to the physical plane. So, yeah, it kind of seems like he's making up for his actions. He ended what would have been a potentially catastrophic war that would have led to probably the death of most of Midland's people. And he did it in a way that pretty much made Midland the safest place to be, honestly. And again, he brought about this utopian city that everyone could live in and be safe. But I want to ask, and this is mostly what people point to when they say that Griffith might actually have like a good goal in the end. Because if you think about it from a utilitarian point of view, Griffith killed a couple hundred people needlessly. He sacrificed a couple hundred people to eventually create peace in the country that he wanted to rule and create a utopian society where everyone could be happy and safe. But I want to ask a really important question. Why is he doing this stuff? And I don't mean the why in terms of, oh, because he wanted to have a kingdom and he could. I mean more specifically, why does the God Hand want this to happen? How does this benefit the God Hand? Because we have to remember that Griffith is femto, and femto is a part of the God Hand. So whatever the God Hand's ambitions and goals are, those are Griffith's ambitions and goals. Everything is matched into causality, and Griffith has some insight into causality, so he knows the end result of everything he's doing. So if the God Hand has some sort of evil ambition for creating Falconia, that must mean that Griffith shares in those ambitions. It is largely suggested by the narrative that Griffith is probably the Antichrist, or at least an allegory to the Antichrist, someone who has all this charisma and charm, and seems like he's bringing about salvation, but he's actually damning everyone, and will bring about some terrible catastrophe. And it's very clear that that is what Miura is going for, this dichotomy of Griffith and Guts. Guts, who appears to be villainous in his appearance. He dresses in all black. He has this furious, ferocious demeanor and expression. And throughout most of the story, he is distrusted by those around him. The Holy Iron Chain Knights specifically try to find him and detain him because they think that he is the equivalent of the Antichrist. And yeah, there is an Antichrist equivalent in this story canonically, and they thought it was Guts for the longest time, but it's pretty obvious that it's actually Griffith. So we don't know what's actually going to happen with Falconia. We don't know what's going to happen and how that's going to affect the story. But if I had to guess, I would say the God Hand are using Falconia for some sort of sacrifice, because that's mostly been their motives throughout a lot of the story. Attract a bunch of people to one place to create some sort of event to fundamentally change the nature of the world in a way to benefit humanity. Well, not benefit humanity, but benefit the God Hand's goals. Which, I mean, the idea of evil isn't canon anymore, or at least it's semi-canon, but it's pretty clear that the God Hand is working for some force of evil, some force of ill in the world, and the fact that Griffith is a part of them means that his actions are for the purpose of serving that evil will. So that's basically my point. Griffith is working with the God Hand. Griffith is working with the God Hand, and because he's working with the God Hand, that naturally means that Griffith's ambitions and the God Hand's ambitions are one and the same. So we can't divorce what Griffith does from what the God Hand does. And since the God Hand are the villains of the story, and they clearly have some evil ambition, we can't call Falconia like Griffith's good deed for the day, because it's very clear that something bad is going to happen. They've already implied that in the chapters. There's like this underbelly to Falconia that they haven't fully revealed yet. This eerie quality to it. The fact that Rickert almost didn't make it out of Falconia without being killed. Miura is setting us up for the idea that Falconia has this like underbelly, this secret to it that we don't understand, and it's gonna become a double-edged sword. It reminds me of the saying of, in order to boil a frog in water while it's still alive, you slowly heat it up so that it gets used to that pot of water. So by the time it's boiling and killing it, it doesn't even realize it. And I think that is what is happening in Falconia. Something terrible is happening or is about to happen, and no one realizes it yet. And Griffith is trying to keep it under wraps. And that is why Griffith did everything wrong. And if you disagree with me, shut up. But feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Who do I care? Why am I even making this video? No one is watching these videos that I make randomly because I have nothing better to do with my time. And I made my Star Wars podcast, and I really liked it, and I enjoyed it, and no one watched it, and no one commented. I just want to make good videos. Actually, I don't really care. Whatever. Like, comment, and subscribe, please, 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 please. Oh, by the way, you should definitely read Berserk. Yeah, do that. Read Berserk. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. It's the best manga. I love it. Read it. Please.